Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Infinite Creative Chat with me, Sab. I'm looking like this today. Oh, and there's my guest. I was gonna hide her. No, go away. So anyway, it's me, and I'm going to introduce you to my guest in a minute, who is. I'll just introduce you to my guest. Here she is. She's Nina. Hello, Nina.
Hello.
We were just having a conversation. Are you hot where you are? Is it as crazy as where I am?
No, it's cooler than Europe, and it's cooler than the UK, I understand. So we're probably about 10, 15 degrees cooler than you are.
Well, we're sweltering here. We were just having a sort of random conversation about this being, can you remember? Here's a test for you. What's this?
A yellow glass with water in it.
Okay, so clear liquid in a colored glass, and this?
Yes. Clear glass with colored liquid.
Right. And at one point in our minute and a half conversation, you said that you've always had that urge to eat color.
Oh yes. There's just something so yummy about color, and reds and blues and yellows, and I think I would be a fantastic participant in the Indian celebration. That there's a celebration every year, and I don't remember the name of it, where everyone puts powdered color on their faces. And
Yeah. Have you do you know there's that Indian? I think it's Indian. I can never pronounce it. Ayurveda, something like this.
Ayurveda.
It's a kind of whole system of health, which includes really appreciating your food in sort of deep and meaningful ways.
Yes.
And I remember doing one thing once where we had food. The person who was doing the session, we had 5 different types of food, and we had to appreciate each one in different ways, including, I think, smelling, tasting, feeling, and all the other senses. I mean, does it go as far as that with you when you have food? Do you pay attention to the color?
Sometimes, there's a rule of thumb by some expert that in order to eat healthy, your plate should have lots of different color on it. So green vegetables, red vegetables, white things. I guess you could do the whole rainbow, but I don't know how it would all taste in one meal.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know if I could actually eat a rainbow. In Britain it's called the two veggies and a meat or something.
Yes.
Is basically brown, green, and white, which isn't exactly
right.
a rainbow color. Anyway, I mean, sorry folks, but we were in the middle of a conversation when you interrupted us when I went live. So you're just gonna have to go with the flow. I had a few things I wanted to talk to Nina about, but I will do the official thing and say that I was screen sharing and it's disappeared. So I'm going to share a screen here, and this screen is going to give you some deeper information about what's going on here.
Yes, very deep. Yeah.
So this is apparently what Nina is up to, and it says Nina underneath Infinite Chat there, Nina Lockwood, and there's this kind of strange thing because this is her site, the front page of your site, Nina, and it says, what if you lived each day knowing you were made of infinite creative potential? And you'll see where I'm going with this. Okay. And that's her coaching site. And then there's her shows when she interviews creative people, and she calls it Creativity Conversations. And then there's me. I've got a site called Infinity Coaching, and I say I help you express your infinite creativity. And I've got a chat show, which is this one, which is called Infinite Chat. And I've got another website, which is called Infinite Creativity Now. So my question is, you notice how I'm slipping in my, some nice subtle advertising there. But my question is, Nina, are we actually one and the same person?
I've heard that we are all one. So yes and no.
So this thing with
I think we're both tapping into something very similar, a similar vein.
Yeah. And I wanted to have hang on, about. Yeah, on your about page, it says, I'm just going to pick out 2 or 3 things. You or your website claims that you are an advanced transformative coach, speaker, facilitator. You've been working in the field of energy medicine. You also talk about that you're an artist. And which of these sort of labels, as it were, or titles, do you feel most comfortable with? I mean, all of them, none of them, one or two of them?
Oh, golly. I guess it depends on the day. They're just labels, right? It's all about what we're doing in the moment. So some days I say I'm an artist and I play with my art. Some day I say I'm a coach and I coach people. But I think ultimately where it all comes from is that other place of infinity, of potential, of showing up and let's just see what happens in the conversation, whether it's a conversation with another person or a conversation with paint, or paper, or photography.
So when you, at the beginning, you say here, made of infinite creative potential. So how do you bring that into reality? You know, you've got someone who comes to you, for example, with this sort of, you've got so much creativity in you, and we'll talk about that in a second. How do you, when someone comes to you, do you help them be more creative, or do you just let them, just give me an idea.
Well, we touched on this when you were on my call. So the way it shows up for me is that so much of the time people don't think they're creative because they're not artistic. So there's an interesting separation that people make. You know, the story about how kids, when they're in kindergarten and first grade, who's an artist, who can paint, who can sing, and everybody says, me, me, me. And then by the time they're in 6th or 7th grade, maybe one person raises their hand, you know, because they've been talked out of it because somebody's idea of what art was or creativity was didn't match what the kids were doing. And we live with that, right? All the criticism that people are quote unquote lovingly given, which just beats the crap out of all of us in terms of really following the impulses that we have to make stuff. So I just see this all the time, that people say, oh, well, you know, I can't paint anything, I can't draw. And they have this list already to convince themselves that they're not who they really are. But just as we were saying in our conversation, when you realize how every single thing is a creative act, what you have for breakfast, what you wear, you know, how you respond, what pen you use, what color mug you're drinking from, whether it's a clear glass or a colored glass, or what, all of these things are just materials that we tap into and we put them together, whether it lasts for a minute, an hour, a month, a year, however long, doesn't really matter, because that source is always generative.
So you're proclaiming, sort of as the title on your site, infinite creative potential. Do people come to you saying, I would like to discover my infinite creative potential, or is it a bit more down to earth?
Well, I think most people think they have a problem that needs to be solved and they don't know how to solve it.
What sort of problem?
Well, it can be anything, right? It could be a writer's block. It could be creating something for an online program. It could be just figuring out what their next step in their lives is. It's so part of it, and I'm curious as to whether you think this too, is that people just have to be, if you point people in a direction and say, look what's already here, look what you're already doing, look what's already happening, it starts to open that little tiny frame of reference that they have about what's possible for them. And if they know that there is an infinite well of possibilities on any subject, it's really, you know, that old adage of give a man a fish and he eats for a day, and teach him how to fish and he can feed himself for the rest of his life. I think it's the same thing. If we know that we have access to potential, whether it's in any direction, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that it exists and we're connected to it. We're a part of it.
So it's not that some people are creative and some people aren't. It's that we all are. It's that some people, they don't realize they're creative, or maybe some people, they don't want to be particularly creative.
A lot of it is, as I was saying, just how they define it. You know, creative means this, but when you look at business, for example, I read that creativity was the second most important element in business these days. But if you ask people what that means, they say, oh, well, you know, coming up with new solutions and adapting to change. And yet for many people, as you were saying, they don't want to change. They just want to wiggle something around so that it's the same. And really, you're missing out when you don't have that opportunity to explore.
Now, I'm going to show people in a second something very creative that you did. I'll actually show it quickly, but we're not going to talk about it yet.
Okay.
Where is it? Where is it? Okay. Yeah. So, folks, I'm going to. Yeah, actually, I've got to share another screen. So this is a bit of a teaser. You created something recently, and it was rather exceptional. I've never seen anything quite like it before. And this is it. And so is this. The same thing. And so is this. And so is this. So we're going to talk about that in a second, this intriguing thing. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, were you one of those people who had creativity hammered out of you as a kid and you had to kind of rediscover it? And
I think I was either slightly discouraged or ignored in the process. And but I was always making stuff. And I was always using my hands. I always have felt like that kinesthetic experience was really important. I mean, the cerebral one is great. It's necessary. We can't avoid that. But the actual kinesthetic feeling, touching, making things, has a real, I think really is grounding. And it's exciting. So why not do more of it?
So are you kind of rather suspicious about the online life that most of us seem to lead these days?
How so?
Do you think it's a negative thing? Do you think we're far too much in our screens and we should be more in nature, that sort of thing?
Oh, I don't know that there's a should.
Touching trees and...
I know there's an opportunity to experience something more directly. I think in terms of communication, this is it for now until the world opens up and it's safe to actually touch one another. Trees are a little safer to touch, grass, you know, that sort of thing. But people, we still have to do the screen thing. But, interestingly enough, I was telling you earlier that we have a couple guys regrading our gravel driveway. And the fellow who's working on it is 79 years old. He could not find anyone for the longest time to work with him because guys were more interested in hanging out in front of their screens than they were being outside doing manual labor. He finally found someone, but for a while he had a helper who was older than he was, and they never took breaks, but they were always moving, touching, carrying, lifting. And I think that gives you a much richer experience of life if you're directly engaging.
I can see a lot of interesting colors behind you. But so obviously you do stuff where you put bits of color on bits of flat things. But I'd like to talk to you about something that you did recently, which I'm actually going to quickly again show another screen. I'm just juggling with screens here. I wanted to quickly show a few seconds of a video. It'll be silent because I don't think the can people see that? Yeah, I don't think the actual sound comes through, but I just wanted to show there's this video which you did of something. Can you actually hear anything there or not?
I can't.
You can't. All right, I've got the sound coming through.
Looks pretty good though.
Yeah, this is a video that even if you do say yourself. So, autobiography of a love affair with the world. I think this is part of a recent creative project you took part in, and you created this thing, and it's called the Cabinet of Curiosities. I mean, I have seen things in France as well. But maybe they call them what is it? Something like a curiosity cabinet, something like that. They're kind of a thing, but they're very, very rarely done these days, I think. So there you are talking about it. I'm going to stop that and then come back to you. And I will show all four sides of your memory pagoda, or I'm not quite sure what you want to call it. Could you just tell us quickly what it's about?
Sure. So I had been taking a program with Michael Neal called Emerging Voices, where every month we were given an assignment to create something, express something. And this particular month, we were given an assignment where it was going to, whatever we did, take a full month to develop it. And so I was reading poetry by Mary Oliver, who I think is fabulous. And as I'm reading it in the mornings, I thought, oh, you know, I really related to a lot of her experiences being outside in nature and experiencing things on a very visceral level. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I just assembled all of the stuff that I have that are mementos of life and see what it would look like if I put it all together in one place, because it, you know, of course, it's scattered. Photographs are here and little tchotchkes are there and they're all over the place. But I thought, what if I did it that way? So, and also being an artist, and which means being part scavenger, I have stuff, you know, little bits of stuff all over the place. So a friend of mine, so I thought, wouldn't it be fun to build a tower, a pagoda, a cabinet of curiosities, and just put things in there that represented different experiences in my life. So a friend of mine built me a turntable, square turntable that was 24 inches, 2 feet. And so it could spin, you could spin it and you could see all four sides. So I went in my attic and then I went in my basement, I went in my garage, and I found drawers and cabinets and little places, cubby holes, where I could stick stuff. So then it was just, what was so cool about it was there was so little thinking about it. I mean, maybe the most thinking was, you know, how do we get the turntable to work? Right.
I'm just going to bring it up as you talk. Yeah.
So,
and by the way, sorry, I was just going to say, anyone who's watching, or even in the replay, then feel free to ask questions and we'll see them and we'll talk about them a little bit later. Right. So yeah. So here we've got all four sides.
Yeah. So there's four sides to it, and one side was primarily photographs, which is this one right here. And what I did was I just assembled, and with each side is slightly different, but there's sort of a general category of nature. There's another one of spirituality. There's another one of creativity, if you will. And then the fourth one is kind of up for grabs.
Okay, let me just go through them. So which side is this?
This is the photograph side. Okay,
and this one?
This is, well, this one is a little more complicated. Both of those images are collages that I made.
Okay.
So this has got a mix. Like there's a lot of love on this side. You can see there's a lot of hearts on the lower part of it.
Right.
And the middle collage was more of an exploration of time and the eternal. And the top of it, boy, I have to look at it now myself. The top of it was just little paraphernalia. There was a sand dollar in there. There was, thank you, some antiques in there. There there was a little antique jar. I think it could have been a powder jar or something that I put in milkweed fluff. I don't know if you know what milkweed plants are. They're fluffy.
No.
They kind of look like dandelions in the fall. They're white and they fly in the air. And so there's some antiques there, and there was the sand dollar. There is a couple of different kinds of stones in there. There's a stamp from when I was doing calligraphy. So, and there's that middle box that looks like bronze or something. That one is an antique, a little below. Yeah, is an antique stamp holder.
Okay.
So I'm sure I lived in another century, at least one, and so certain things just seem to be following me.
Okay, so so this one, if they each had a theme, so this is like the photography side. This was the more, did you say love?
Well, they're not, the sides aren't exclusively one theme.
Okay.
But the kinds of things that are in there, like this one, if you go to the next one. Yeah. So what I did with this, which was really a fun experiment, was you'll see in the middle of it, there's a section that has little tiny scrolls right
Yes.
there. So what I did with each one of those is I wrote out this list of things that I had been really moved by. So books, I wrote the names of a bunch of books in there. Like, you know, Winnie the Pooh and the Three Musketeers and you name it, a whole bunch of books. And then another one of the scrolls was music. So classical music and then more popular music, jazz music, stuck it in there. Films, I had a list of films in there. So you could go in and you could open up a scroll and you would see this list of films from, you know, Citizen Kane to lots of different movies that I'd been touched by. So all of the little things in here, like even there are sections where I have materials that I've used for artwork. So there were
crayons, yeah,
yarn.
Little sort of doll type things here.
Yes, those are on, used to be on pin cushions.
Okay.
They were Chinese. So I used them in collages.
Buttons.
And the buttons, right? Some of those buttons are from the late 1800s. Wow. And there is another larger scroll on my right side of the screen, that one, which is a miniature version of a calligraphy poster that I used to use when I was doing calligraphy. I had a calligraphy business when I lived in New York City for a while. So, and then those little photographs on the side were images of calligraphy that I had done.
Now, I imagine, apart from the fact that this must have taken an awful long time to put together, I would
30
think.
days. Actually, it was less than 30 days because I was noodling around, letting ideas come to me for, I don't know, a week or two. But actually, it came very quickly. So on this page, as you've pulled it out, there is a silk tie on one side, which is, I used to make quilts out of silk ties.
This one here?
Yes. I didn't use that one to make a quilt, and then these little finger puppets in one of the other cabinets, I used to use to do very either advanced or very woo-woo energy medicine.
in one of these other ones here?
No, actually, you touched on it, that earlier photograph, which is probably another, one more over.
Is this one?
Nope. Going.
Oh, this one? This one's a bit fuzzier.
No, but it's the same concept.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually in there. So all of these things were things that I really connected with, not just because of what they were in and of themselves, but because of the craftsmanship and the meaning behind them. And all of this memory pagoda is a tribute, if you will, to those things that were meaningful in my life. So there's on that same page, there is a little notice. My father died when I was 15, so I put that up there because I thought he wanted to be in the mix too.
Is that this?
Yes. Yep.
I was going to say to you, I mean, apart from the fact that it must have taken an awful long time to put all of this together, it emotionally, if it had been me, I would have been, I don't know if I'd have been in tears half the time or with a lump in my throat, or, you know, very emotionally touched by seeing this kind of monument of a life. I mean, you know, you're still going, of course, but a lot of these things are from the past. You know, how did you feel when you were putting it together? Oh,
you know, it was so much fun because there was very little thinking involved. This wants to go in there. Okay. Oh, I can put that in here. Oh, this too. This. Okay. Yes. Great. And then I would turn it around and I would add and subtract and seashells and stones and all sorts of things. But what I had said in that video was that I felt such a sense of gratitude and that I'd been blessed with a kind of life where I got to see the richness of life. And it wasn't a tribute to having traveled the world. And there are photographs on the other side of different places that I've been in the world, you Kenya and various and sundry other places. But it was that I had been given such a gift to see the diversity and the richness of life. So it wasn't about making $1 million, and it wasn't about, traveling the world, impressing people. It was just that I had been given this gift of life, and that I had been given the tools to look at life in a way that was that showed that kind of the inside out nature of it, the beauty of it, the harmony. And I thought, if I died today, I think what it did is gave me a greater appreciation of my life in general, just looking across that span of decades.
Right. I just wanted to acknowledge, I said, please ask comments, but we'll have questions and stuff if there are any. After the sort of half-hour mark, I do have someone who's saying hello. This is 𝗖𝗛𝗙𝗚. She's a friend of mine. She's saying hello to Sab and Nina, and she says, nothing is casual. She speaks Spanish first language and French second language. So nothing is casual. That is why I'm watching this wonderful interview. Thanks, 𝗖𝗛𝗙𝗚. So if we go back to, I'm just going to go back to something. Share the screen again. So I don't have anything wanted to share there. I did want to say though, how did you have, I think I read somewhere or heard you in the video saying that you had the idea that this would be a nice thing for other people to do. Well, is part of your creativity helping others to be as creative as they can be?
It's funny because I did this for me, and I didn't have any sense that, like, why would anybody care about mementos from somebody's life? Isn't that like a scrapbook or a what's different about it? But afterwards I had so many comments from people who said it really touched them, and I was surprised. I mean, it touched me because it was my life, and instead of seeing my life myopically in this moment or in the last year or something like that, it was this panorama of, for me, richness and acknowledgement. And so it wasn't deliberate that I did think, why would anybody care about this? But then people did. They said, oh, it's so touching, because I guess it helped them see something about the richness of their own lives, which was wonderful.
Do you have any plans to go further with this? Well, no,
maybe.
I was thinking to help others. I think you mentioned maybe
I thought
creating
a
course or something.
Yeah, I was thinking about creating a course, which I haven't done yet, but it could be fun. It could be, simple prompts, and just seeing what happens when how it assembles itself. Because to me, that was what happened. It assembled itself, and I was the handyman, I was the helper.
But I mean, so that was kind of a one-off, I guess. But before that, and I imagine after that, there's you as an artistic type and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your art. Do you actually have your art somewhere that we could see any of it? Because I'm not sure.
I can I can hold a couple things up to the screen.
You could do that. Do you happen to have them online as well? I should have done this before. Okay,
that's up and coming project.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about, because a lot of the people that I know are in the sort of coaching business or helping business, but I wanted this show to be about. It could be about anyone as long as they create something. It's exactly what you were saying. There's something about getting your hands dirty. So I want this. There's so many wonderful shows of people talking to other coaches. I wanted to talk to people who get their hands dirty and they have this kind of mad passion for doing something which on the face of it is kind of useless, throwing a bit of color on a piece of paper. How does that? So what do you do and why do you do it?
Okay. Because it's fun. I do it because it's fun and it feels good and it's a constant surprise. So the picture that you posted of me for this show was a collage that I did where I took I painted bits of paper, or actually
I'm just going to bring that up as you talk.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I would paint paper. So this again is like a treasure hunt in a way, and I'm just kind of following the breadcrumbs, if you will, where I would take pieces of paper and I would paint them and I would texturize them and use different colors, but I didn't know where they were going. I didn't know where they were going to end up. So I'd have bunches of boxes of color and paints. And what I did was I started layering them on the art panel. And when I got about 5 or 6 layers deep, I took an electric sander to it.
That sounds slightly worrying.
Oh, it was so much fun. I felt like a mad scientist. Oh, it was great. It was terrific. So that took, what would happen is it would take layers off, but you wouldn't know which layer was coming off. And then I would go back in, and it was so much fun because it was, you weren't starting with a blank slate, but you were starting with something different than what you had looked at. And you know what was wonderful about the process was, you know, you put something down, you say, well, that really looks great. And then like, okay, next. And then you put another layer on top. So that first layer is like an archaeological dig, right? So you've got another layer and, oh, there's a really good image there, but oh, well, and you cover that one over. So everything that looks really good to you in the moment disappears. So it's a wonderful experiment in just not having anything on it, just seeing what keeps emerging from the process.
So what is this, in a nutshell, what would a given piece of art of yours represent in the end?
Oh, golly. I suppose anybody could say anything to that, but for me, it's just an exploration of what happens if you do this. And I'm not as interested in representational art. I mean, sometimes I am, but for the most part, my interest is more in the feeling that comes from color and composition and light and texture. That to me is more of it takes me out of my head, out of an intellectual interpretation. Oh, that's a house, you know, and oh, those are shutters, to more like, oh, what does this feel like? You know, it's kind of, what's in there?
Yeah, as soon as, I mean, I do abstract stuff and I love that because I didn't have any formal training, but I like the fact that I can do anything I like. And because it's abstract, no one can say it shouldn't look like that because they don't even know what it is. And they accept abstract for just being something abstract. They don't have any sort of preconceived idea. So that's good abstract and that's crap abstract. You know, that's a crap mess and that's a beautiful mess. So I like it for that. And as soon as you, my personal thing, as soon as if I were to try to draw a house, for example, immediately I would be worried for someone's going to come along and say, well, that's a house, is it? You know, or seen better houses, or my 5-year-old could do a better house than that. All of these things would start slamming into my brain. And I don't want that. I don't want that crap, you know. So I think that's one of the reasons I chose abstract. There's no rules. No one can tell me what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
But the reason I asked you about what a given piece means to you, did I tell you when we talked last time, did I give you the story, as it were, of the painting based on a line?
Yes.
It was basically me taking hours to do the first line, and then I just colored in around the line. But it took me, most of the time of the painting was before I'd actually touched the canvas with anything. For about 3 or 4 hours before that, and then pretty quickly afterwards it was done. It was the line. So that painting, for me, that is the painting of the fear of starting something when you don't know what's going to happen. That's what that represents for me. You know, it doesn't represent the colors of the rainbow or whatever it ended up as, or a nice wavy line. It represents that thing.
Yeah. So I have it in my mind. I don't know if it'll actually happen if we ever get to that place again, but I've thought it would be really fun to do a TED Talk about what making art can teach you about living life. And one of the things that I really love about doing collage work in particular, but really it's true with abstract art as well in general, is that you can't go in with expectations. And you have to be neutral. And you have to be willing to go into the places that are ugly or look ugly to you. And you can't think. I mean, that's the thing. I remember one of my teachers years ago when I was saying, I'm not sure what to do here. And she said, if it's taking you more than 3 seconds, move on to the next thing.
Ah.
And I just find that true. You know, if I wait. What's that?
You're not supposed to think. As soon as you're thinking, you've lost touch with the greater inspiration.
Yes. And I think that's true for life too. I think it's so many things you learn in the process of making art are so true for life. You know, being willing to go into the places that are ugly or they look hopeless to you. And I remember, again, with the same instructor, I was working in her class and I didn't really like what I had done. And she came over and she started peeling. She said, well, what if you do this? And she took one of the pieces that I'd collaged on. She started tearing it off. And I was like, no,
what the hell are you doing?
But it was so much better. Then I started taking pieces off the whole larger piece. And it was really great. But if I had stopped at that one point, I said, don't touch my work of art, I would have never seen it.
You know, there is such a thing. There's a thing called art therapy in various forms. And I did it once. I did some sessions and I was sitting there in this session thinking the first exercise we had to do was you had a piece of paper and you had to do a progression from, I don't think it was even the colors of the rainbow. I think we had 2 colors. And you had to progress from one color on one side of the paper to the other color on the other side seamlessly without seeing the join. And when it was something like blue and yellow, that's extremely hard to not see the join. Anyway, I got into it. Maybe it was two tones, red and yellow, so that wasn't too difficult to not see the join. And at first I was thinking, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I could be doing a lot better things than piddling around with bits of red and yellow. And I was thinking that for about 5 minutes. And then suddenly she said, well, that's it for today, folks. And 2 hours had gone by. And I thought, wow, what happened? Where did those 2 hours go? And I remember being a bit irritated at the beginning, thinking how stupid this is. And I actually ended up doing a 2-hour unexpected meditation session. Mm-hmm. And not only that, I went away with a completely different perspective on patience and little steps. Tiny little steps. You get into the little steps and you're so concentrated on those, you don't see the big picture emerging. And when I stood back from the little steps, I suddenly saw a beautifully seamless-ish painting of color, which was, it seems a bit pointless, but I was very proud of it. You know, that represented a moment in my life. And so what do you think abstract artists are actually just in deep therapy for all the time, or they should be?
And well, I suppose you could think that any sort of exploration could be therapy if it helps you see something differently.
I mean, what happens when you start painting and you forget about time? What's going on there, do you think?
Oh, I think that you become very present to the materials. You start having a conversation with them. So it's not about what's going to happen next, what's going to happen when I put the paint down, what's going to happen when I have lunch. It's about what is happening on this piece of substrate right now and who wants to be in the party with them. So for me, it's a laboratory, if you will, of what can happen if we put these chemicals together, what will emerge. Which I think is why I like abstract work more than I do representational work, because representational, it's a flower, it's a landscape, it's a vase, it's a pretty straightforward portrait, whatever it is. So you get into the intellect of, oh, well, look at the way the eyes are painted, or isn't this an interesting pose? And it takes me out of the process. And so much of that I see in the world, both with people in terms of coaching and artwork, is it's all about the result. It's all about getting to the finish line with it, rather than this wonderful experience that feels both elevating and, frustrating, but still it's all of a piece. And when you, to me anyway, going through all of that, afterwards it's like, wow, what a ride. Let's do that again.
And as you said earlier, I think, Nina, it could be a metaphor for life. Like I discovered with the painting, I saw my life in a different way after the patience of the little things, getting lost in the little steps. The big picture emerged.
Yeah.
I sometimes have this nagging question when I'm playing around with colors and stuff. And I'd like to know if it happens to you as well. And occasionally I think, shouldn't I be sort of helping build wells or schools in Africa or something, rather than putting little bits of color on some bit of canvas? You know, I sometimes question the validity of it, or am I wrong? Should I just be enjoying my life, whatever that might be?
Well, that's a great question. And I've heard, and I'll probably butcher this quote terribly, but the quote has something to do with doing what moves you is more important than doing.
Right.
And that energy of doing what you love is more, because of the place it comes from, is so much more powerful in the long run than somebody doing a job because they have to do it, or it seems like the right thing to do, because then it's just coming out of obligation. If I do this, I'm a good person.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't help little kids in Africa. I do other things. Maybe I, help someone in the street in Paris, but I don't. If I didn't paint, I wouldn't immediately start helping kids in Africa necessarily. So that's I'm being a bit, I'm not quite sure what the word is, but I'm not saying I would love to be. What you just said reminded me, the best thing to do is the thing that you actually do, because if I stop painting, I don't think I'd rush over to Africa and try and help them.
Yeah.
But the thing that I can do with passion can lead me to helping people, as opposed to just not helping anyone.
Right. And that question of helping others is a really dicey one, I think, because there's so much of a sense of, well, we should be saving the world, or we should be making sure that nobody is in poverty, or that everyone has what they need to live a safe, healthy life, not oppressed. And this time that we live in right now has just highlighted those concerns. And yet, if you were really called to do it there, you would do it there, because it would be coming from your heart. And so much of helping becomes dry. Let me save you. Let me come in and fix you, rather than what can we build together? What's more of a collaborative effort together?
And do you think art brings people together? Do you think that's actually, if you go further than just playing with colors, is it a sort of unifying thing, a bit like music? It sort of unites us in friendship way, way beyond racial barriers, national barriers, nationalities.
You've said it yourself.
Yeah.
I think it does. And, if you go to a museum where there's a very large installation, or it's an interactive installation, people are participating and they're moving in and out of it, and they're having a real-time experience in the thing, or as an audience together collectively. And that can be really powerful, just like a musical concert or a theater.
Yeah. And I mean, if you see people, one of the best ways of connecting with people who are not the same as us, it's not that I'm going to go somewhere where they are maybe possibly more needy. I condescendingly think they're more needy than me. And I would think that they would therefore like if I shared them how to use an internet browser, let's say something stupid. That wouldn't have any interest from whatsoever in comparison to them playing some of their favorite music to me, or showing me a piece of art that they've just done. That's how real connections come, I think, through very human, simple things that can be shared, not one superior person coming in to solve everyone else's problems.
Right. Right. Whatever means they are trying to do it by.
Yeah. I mean, you can see I'm kind of I've got this kind of feeling that I'm a little bit too privileged to be able to play with paint sometimes, I'm still working on that, actually.
Well, I bet that you forget that thought when you're immersed in painting something.
Yeah, and all I want to do when I finished is share it, either give it away or share it somehow. So it's not really I don't think it's a selfish thing. And I love absorbing other people's art that they share with me.
Yeah.
That's a huge gift. If anyone shares their art with me just to look at something they've done, even, a little kid who shows me a little painting.
Yeah.
Wow, immediately I'll get very, very touched by that. The innocence, that comes through art. And we scribble, don't we? Before we can write, before we can speak and stuff, we're scribbling around, make a mark and, oh, I made that.
Yeah, look what came out.
Yeah. There's a question from 𝗖𝗛𝗙𝗜𝗏, our viewer, who says, can energy healing eliminate stress and anxiety? I guess she saw that on the site that I showed. And I'm not quite, do you still do this, or?
It's a great question. And I think it can minimize it. Because I was practicing energy medicine for about 20 years. And I got certified in a bunch of different kinds of modalities. And to me, energy healing can be incredibly useful to minimize symptoms. But there's the mind behind it, that our stressful thinking causes so much of our stress and anxiety. And if that isn't addressed, then the symptoms will come up again, and then we'll just be chasing symptoms. So yes, I think it can not eliminate it, but it can reduce it or minimize it in the moment, because otherwise people wouldn't come back for more sessions, right? But when you understand the nature of the mind and how so much of our suffering is coming from our thinking, then a lot of those symptoms start to fall away, because we realize we're making most of it up. Making up the consequences. We're making up stories about our lives, and then, oh my God, is this really what's happening to me?
So in your career, have you moved away from methods or techniques, and you're going beyond them, or you see them as a way, possibly a good way if people like them to, but the real truth is further somewhere else?
For me, the truth is somewhere else. It's like in the moment, if there's something that helps to settle your mind and give you some more clarity, great. Whatever it is, massage, energy work,
right?
Whatever it is, a good hard bike ride, whatever it is, being out in nature. Those are all terrific because they help us just clear our minds. And when our minds aren't cluttered up, just like when we're painting, then the process can flow on its own. And that, to me, when I was really focusing on energy medicine, it was all about the flow of energy in the body. So that where is it blocked? How does it get unblocked? And I think that concept of flow, I mean, we talk about that being in the flow, where there's nothing obscuring, nothing getting in the way. And that is, again, a great metaphor for life. How can we live life in the flow? Whether it's our bodies, our actions, our connections to other people, what gets in the way? How do we get through that?
Yeah. This, thanks for your question, 𝗖𝗛𝗏. And feel free, if you're watching in the replay, then do feel free, and we'll look at your questions after, no problem. We were talking just before we went live about the ephemeral nature of anything, basically, including art. And I was saying that on the streets of Paris, it's a wonderful place for street art. But I'll go one week and I'll see a new piece of street art. And then I'll go the next week and I'll see that really beautiful piece of street art has been covered up by someone else. And on the one hand, I'm a bit sick, thinking, well, that was really nice. Why? What an idiot, covering it up with their art. As an artist, they should have respected the other person's art. Having said that, maybe next week theirs will be covered up. And I was going to, let me get your reaction on that first of all. Do you think that art is fundamentally ephemeral, or should it last forever, or what?
Oh, I think that's each person would answer that individually.
Because your memory pagoda, no longer is in that
right.
form.
I took it apart.
And I was shocked when you said that.
Well, I have it on film. I have some photographs. I can recreate it. I still have all the materials, and it might show up differently that time. But for me, I really don't think in terms of longevity. I mean, for whom? Who is that for? We were talking about Andy Goldsworthy, whose artwork out in nature is made from natural objects, and it's meant to disintegrate. It's meant to be interacted with the elements. So, that's not a question that's ever really concerned me. Let's preserve this for all eternity.
Yeah.
Really? For who's that for anyway?
Your grandchildren's grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah, there's this guy in Paris, and he decided to do plaster casts of his face, and he started with his tongue out, and I'll show you in a second. He started with his tongue out, and it was literally his face in plaster with his tongue out, his eyes closed because he had to put plaster over his eyes to do the cast. And then that was a success. And then he did another one with a smile, another one with pursed lips like a kiss, and another one with a frown. And they went all over Paris, and then they went all over the world. And his idea was that he would give them to other artists who would paint them in their style and put them up on walls in their town. Brilliant idea. And it worked. He's now a well-known artist. And I did it. I bought 3 or 4 of his faces and I painted them. And I couldn't bear to put them up in the walls of Paris because I knew that they'd be smashed and, So I've got them. And I mean, this is one of them. Here, you see. Oh,
lovely. Yeah. Oh, that's hysterical.
Yeah. So
and you painted that?
I painted it in my style. My style is infinity squared. In other words, I couldn't really do it exactly with this, but you see the purple here carries on this side.
Yes.
As does the green. And the kind of thing here continues on the bottom. So I applied my style. And there it says infinity squared.
Yes.
And I couldn't bear to put it up on the wall. And I was thinking I'm a bit of a fraud because that's not the concept. If it gets, I just couldn't bear to think that someone come along, bash the tongue, and it would be white plaster, But maybe I'm missing the point. Maybe I should have put it up on the wall.
Well, maybe it just felt a little too special to you.
Yeah, it is special. I like it.
Well, it's great.
I don't have to slavishly follow his concept, I guess. Yeah. I feel a connection with him anyway. I love this sharing. Can you show me a couple of your paintings?
I can show you some of the smaller things. And one of the things I wanted to just share briefly was that I've been doing this postcard art using recycled materials. And part of the fun thing about it is that you never know whether it will go through in the mail or not, because they have very specific restrictions that if it's cardboard, if it's not flexible as a postcard size, it may not go through because of the machines that it has to go through.
So what's your concept?
So the process is just using recycled materials.
Yeah.
And then sending them out, and wherever you don't know where they're going to end up.
But you send them to someone.
Yes.
Someone you know.
Someone I know, yes. Or sometimes just leaving them someplace. But if you have for instance, to see if I can do this in a way that you can see this.
Look at the screen, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there. So that's, there we go. That's better.
Yeah.
So that's one that I've used with cardboard and box material, small box material. And then see if I can get this here. Yeah, something like that.
And is there an address somewhere?
There's going to be an address on it. So I'm just taking recycled materials, paper and boxes, and instead of going out and buying materials, so just recycling it and moving it along.
Okay, and then you write the address on it, put a stamp on it,
and then who knows?
The letterbox.
It may end up with the postman.
That sounds
and
a
not
bit
going
like
any further.
Putting a message in a bottle and throwing it into the sea.
It is like that. It is like that. So here's another one. Let's see if I can get it in here in a way
Fantastic. Yeah.
There we go. We've got a reverse image here. So so I'm just using boxes and bits of materials and a glue stick.
Right.
So those are that way.
And theoretically, if there's an address on it and a stamp and it's in a letterbox, they're kind of obliged to send it on.
Yes, unless like these were done on cardboard, and because cardboard is not flexible, sometimes they won't do it, or they want you to put it in a package in an envelope, but then that wrecks the whole thing. So anyway.
So what's your idea there? The sort of deeper idea, if there is one.
The deeper idea is just, what can we do with what we already have in front of us? I don't know how deep that is, but you know, there's one of the people that was on my creativity conversation show, her tagline is, what else is possible? So if you have paper, if you have cardboard, if you have packing material, what else can we do with that? What else is possible with it? And a friend of mine who's going to be on this Friday said he grew up with a mother that when she had something that was going to be thrown away, had used up its normal lifetime, it was, what else could we do with this? Okay,
let's just give you a bit of publicity here. Would it be this guy?
It would be.
Yeah, this looks fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
He is amazing. He's just amazing. And he just classically trained actor, photographer, produces videos, writes screenplays, writes fiction, cooks, can do kitchen renovations. He recently, when the pandemic started, he pivoted and he created a organic food delivery service for people in LA so they could get fresh vegetables.
Amazing.
And
and in fact, all of your things here on Nina's site, which is called 𝗔𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, in Creativity Conversations, you've got all of these. We don't worry about these ones. This one is the best here. This one here.
Yes, that one with you.
Yeah, actually, it is me. Yeah, so that's the one to look at, guys, with Sab Will. But apart from that, there's some other people as well. I don't really know who they are. But let's go back to Nina. Show me another painting or two before we finish up.
All righty. So let me see if I can get this right. So here's one that I did with, I took a wasp nest, you know, the regular.
Did it have wasps?
This is what you do. No wasp. It was post wasp. And I took the paper apart and I started using it for a collage. So let me see if I can get this to look close.
Sorry, I want to get again.
No. See if I can turn this around. This right backwards.
That is pretty phenomenal.
So that has bits of my wedding dress, wasp nest, pearls, a crab claw, some antique buttons, some antique lace. There's a little button there down at the bottom that has a clock on it.
Oh, yes, I can see that.
So those buttons were a signification that it was cocktail time. It was just approaching 5 o'clock. So it just wanted to go in there.
Yeah.
So I just kept finding materials that normally wouldn't be put together. And what if they came together? What would that look like?
Have you got another example?
Let's see. I've got, you know, the one that you showed of the.
Yeah.
Where am I getting? I'll get this right. So this is when I sanded down the levels of collage. There we go, a little better.
Very interesting.
So that's what happens there. And then I just went back into it and turned it into this. Yeah.
You can almost just get lost in it. There's nothing to do, nothing to say. There's just it's like who was I talking with? I think it was with 𝗔𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 or something. I'm not sure about her name. And I think she was talking about the effect looking at a Rothko painting had on her.
Yes.
You know, just the big, huge field of color, sort of almost vibrating. And that reminded my mother when she was young, and she came back when I was a boy, came back from his exhibition and said she just stood there, sat there, transfixed, surrounded by this field of color. I didn't really get what she meant, you know, as a kid. But it's a wonderful effect. And I had the same feeling when you just showed me that. Yeah. It was like I stopped looking for something to say and I just let it be in my consciousness and just think.
And I think that's the way, and I'm glad that's how you felt about it. I think that's the way, if we looked at all of life like that, we stopped imposing our shoulds and shouldn'ts, and it ought to be this way, and what if, you know, wanting to fix it, but just to be with it, that kind of being fully present with what's in front of us.
And this concept of let's see what we can do with what we've got can easily be transferred over to coaching, I guess. because
Yeah.
we are what we've got, kind
Yeah.
of, and
And
we've
what
got
is
so
in
much
there?
that we don't realize, and we look for other
Yeah.
stuff, but in fact, we've already got everything
That's
we need, I
right.
guess.
That's right. I mean, if you knew that you were connected to that infinite creative potential, well, you know this, but you know, those who are not already part of the choir,
we forget.
True, we do forget. But if we knew that, we wouldn't worry about making a mess. We wouldn't worry about getting it wrong. We wouldn't. We wouldn't. We just do, like kids do before they're talked out of it.
Right. Or slapped out of it, in my case. One famous artist, one famous school teacher gave me a slap because I'd coloured. It was supposed to be a pencil study of a crumpled Pepsi can, and I dared to use colours on it. I hadn't followed the rule. I hadn't followed the artistic rules, directions. So I've got someone. I don't know who you are because you haven't gone to StreamYard.com/Facebook, but it's too late now. So someone watching says, "I really like colours." Good. Do you lean towards certain pastel colours?
And you know, I find I go through, and maybe this is true for you, Sab. I find I go through phases of wanting to work with certain colors. So I often work with blue, more watercolor, blue, pastel-y things. But if you look behind me, I've got some collages there that are oranges and reds. And then sometimes I do very neutral colors, grays and beiges and off-whites, and then pop some color into it. So I don't have a preference. It's just, again, like what wants to show up? What color is speaking to me? Is it this color? No, oh, this one.
Yeah, I often have this conversation in my head. Should I explain in words things which were not originally created in words? In other words, should I say to someone what this abstract painting means? Would it help them? Would it make it a richer experience for them? Or am I betraying the original moment? And that even works for me with poems as well, and text, but especially poems, because poems they're almost art with words. And how can you explain a poem in other words? You know, you can say, well, it's a poem about love or hate or something, but the poem is the poem, not your explanation of the poem. So I mean,
well, I totally agree with you. And just like that pagoda that you were showing earlier, I didn't know until I was putting it together that it was a love letter. So I wasn't coming from, this is what this means, and then creating it. I created it, and then, oh, this is what it means.
What sort of love letter was it?
Well, I called it an autobiography of a love letter to the world. So in the assembling of everything and seeing it in front of me, I just saw how much I loved life. And, you know, when you get caught up in little things on a day-to-day basis, you sometimes forget that. But when I looked at this span of decades of things that had happened in my life, I thought, wow, I am so lucky. I've seen incredible movies. I've watched performers. I've seen composers and ballet and poetry, and how much richer can it get? Which is why I occasionally will muse on what it's like for either younger generations who don't have that exposure to the richness of life, that are a little bit more myopic in terms of what's important. Because we do get told what's important. You know, the tree there, not so important. The river, not so important. The job, oh yeah, that's important. You know, relationships, well, maybe, you know, they're functional, but the life is rich when you live it in as many dimensions as you can, I think.
My attempt, we'll be finishing in a second, folks. My attempt to bring that home, if this displays, is a group that I created a few weeks or months ago, and it's called Today's the Day. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes, I actually signed up for it.
You did,
but it hasn't really been my day yet. So
yeah, but it's the same idea as what you were just saying. It's recognize up to once a day that we are having good moments each day, but we don't realize it, and life runs away. The days run into weeks and months. We're not appreciating anything particularly in, many days, some people.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because that's our life running away. So the idea of this it's quite a cute idea, I think. I'm allowed to like my own things. And it's just to say each day, today's the day I painted this painting. Today's the day I called my mother, today's the day I made a cake in the shape of a train for my son. It's not necessarily huge things. It's not today's the day I graduated. It could be simple things.
Yeah. But
to recognize that our days are good days, I don't know, this feeling that our lives run away with us, and then where did that year go? The idea being that if you have got something significant on a regular basis, you end up thinking that your life's actually quite significant. That's the idea.
And you do feel that sense of connection.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important. And how aliveness.
Yeah. So just to finish off then, Nina, is there anything that you would say to anyone on a general sort of theme of, what if you lived each day knowing you were made of infinite creative potential? Would you like to just give a message to anyone to sort of say what you believe on that?
Get on my soapbox?
Well, why not?
Experiment, explore, do it, try it. That's the only way that it's there, is to get in the game.
Try what? How would I do that?
Well,
if I don't have any idea, I'm not creative, mate.
I know.
So what would you say to someone who says they're not creative? Because a lot of people do.
Well, that's going back to the beginning of our conversation, right? Do they mean artistic, or that they never have new ideas, or they don't know how to problem solve, or they don't see possibilities? I think you get little bit by little bit, you disabuse people of that notion. Oh, you're right. This is happening. It's all a game. If we take it as a game, and that we're playing with the house's money, we can do anything, and there's no cost. It's just an exploration, going towards what we love and what would really be fun.
Have you got any plans for what's coming up? You got a new project in mind, or anything you're excited about, or even that want to tell us about?
Oh, golly. I'm not focusing on one thing right now, although I'd like to do some more of these collages, these sanded collages. They're a little rough on the rotator cuff, I've noticed, with the sanding, But I think going towards whatever feels joyful is how I want to spend my life these days. Not that I want to live in this Pollyanna sort of world, because you can't really now, but to find the beauty in life, however it appears, the beauty, whether it's in terms of relationships or making things.
I'm going to show you something that's just happened.
Oh, good.
A pigeon has just landed on my windowsill, and that's very, very rare. That's rather a beautiful thing.
It is.
There he goes.
And so do we.
Yeah, that was amazing, because they don't normally come that close. Sorry, I just wanted to share that with you.
Yes.
Me and birds have got a thing going.
Oh, good.
Yeah. They often fit into some of my Paris photographs. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you rudely. The pigeon interrupted you rudely.
Well, it's all part of what's going on now, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. That was really fun.
Really nice, yeah. And I think we can talk about this sort of stuff for forever. But we've got stuff to create.
That's right.
So
let's get to it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on my show. Thank
you.
What did we do before? I was on your show, so thanks for inviting me on that. I'm looking forward to your guest on Friday. And
yes, thank you.
Let's carry on being creative.
That's it. Carry on.
Thanks so much, Nina.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye.